with Finance and Human Resources. Thank you, Councilor Nave, Caldwell, my name, Rita Paniagua, Corey Williams, Jimmy Monto, Patrona Jones-Rouser, Richard, Mike. Thank you for joining us, and everybody that's in the room, thank you for joining. And do you want to, should we just give them the floor? What do you want?
Take it away.
Take the floor?
Excellent. Well, thank you for having us, Council. So I think it's important to start off by acknowledging that our current processes and systems are antiquated and outdated. And I think that the frustration of that is not only shared by finance and HR, it's shared with you all, with our employees, with everyone. I know we've had multiple conversations where it's pull this piece of data for me, and it doesn't exist. So I think it's important to acknowledge that those are broken, and this is the attempt to fix that. The second thing I want to talk about, I know it's important to not replicate PeopleSoft 2.0. So I want to give Mike and I the opportunity to talk about how we plan on differentiating ourselves from PeopleSoft, that original launch. And how we're doing that is kind of the big issues with PeopleSoft. First and foremost, it was a lift and shift. We took bad data out of a bad system, put it in a new shiny system, and it was still bad data. So what are we doing to make sure that doesn't happen? It wasn't properly staffed, so talking about what we're doing and how we're staffing this project to make sure that it isn't PeopleSoft 2.0. And then talking about what we've done so far with Oracle and with the EY team, what we have left, and then kind of what that looks like when it all shakes out. So the staffing piece, the rollout of PeopleSoft was understaffed not only by consultants, but internally. So what we've done differently, we have an HRIS manager. Aria is over there. Aria is here to help us with this rollout. We have an internal project manager. We've got an assigned trainer through digital services that is here to help us train on the rollout of SWC and Oracle. We've got a time and attendance rep in finance, Kenny. We've got the entire HR team and the finance teams. And then we've got 15 plus consultants with EY that are helping us with this rollout. So we've done our due diligence to make sure that we have the time, the staff, and the consultants to make sure that this is not a 2.0 rollout of PeopleSoft, exactly. So we're staffed. The second piece is the lift and shift, how we're addressing that. So lift and shift in the sense, like I said, we were taking bad data out of a bad system, putting it in a new, taking the engine out of a Chevy Cobalt, putting it in a Ferrari and expecting it to act like a Ferrari. It's not a Ferrari. So we were avoiding that in the way we're doing it. Some of the stuff we've done already, we went through phase 0, which I know we've heard that and it was kind of painstaking. What is a phase 0? So phase 0, we looked at the ability to adopt a software like this. So EY helped us walk through that. We did a visioning session, which is us taking my team and Mike's team and making sure that what we need out of a system can be done. So we did that visioning session. We did the planning in requirements phase, which is taking that roadmap that we made with phase 0 and making sure that we have tangible steps in that roadmap. Next, we worked on data conversion. We're still in the tail end of this phase. And that data conversion is, again, making sure that the mediocre at best data that's coming out of AS400 is not mediocre going into the new system. So that's the phase we're currently in. We're working through the tail end of that data conversion. But, I mean, I can't speak for years past, but I'm assuming that was not done in PeopleSoft during that rollout. And what's left to make sure that what we've done so far doesn't fall flat is to essentially document where we've started this process. We're halfway done. We've got 300-page documents on each piece of HR, each piece of finance. The goal of that is to outlive this administration, myself. Those are walkthroughs of how to keep this system going and how to change our data pieces as we need. I think you all know we have union contracts. So instead of EY coming in and just building it for our current contract, that changes every couple of years. We're 2 more years, we'll be negotiating 6 contracts. So how do we internally have the resources to go in and change their pay scales, to change their clothing allowance, all of those things? What do we do? So we're documenting that to outlive us and this administration. Next, we've got to test. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
When you talk about outliving the administration, are there concerns that we're too late to be doing this right now in this administration? That we get that it gets delayed just even a little bit, and we end up in the middle of this conversion as an administration is changing? And I've been alive long enough to see as administrations change, people change, bodies change, and suddenly those cracks that are there, things just start falling through them. So I'm a little leery of the fact that we're a year and a half away from the Walsh administration being gone, and are we in dangerous waters just converting now? Especially with something like payroll, which, as you can imagine, if that goes wrong, we have a very unhappy workforce, which leads to people, not being able to pay your bills on a Friday afternoon, and having to wait till Monday affects all of our staff. So,
Right. I would say at this point, if we were to delay any further than we currently are, that would put us at risk. But the way we're set up right now, HR and payroll will be done in its entirety by the new calendar year. So
if all goes as so that's a
just
perfect
HR and
world
payroll,
situation,
yes.
right? Okay.
Not the finance piece that has been pulled out. That's
Okay.
a separate issue.
That was not a sarcastic nod. That was
Okay. Right.
a true nod.
So payroll gets done by the end of the calendar year, and then the financial part of when is the expected end date for the rest of it?
So that
So we've kind of chopped off the general ledger and the AR centralization. So really, the most recent letter that was submitted was the 2.35 million for, test, deploy HR and payroll, and then build out benefits and recruiting. So that's really modernizing, HR across the finish line and bringing payroll off the finish line. Some of the handouts in front of you, I'm not going to go through every line on the AS400 payroll overview, but this is just really, how we use AS400 payroll today. So with all of this finance modernization, really what we're trying to do is this time and attendance and this payroll piece in AS400, that's what we're replacing with this project. This is, layers upon layers of manual input. And then PeopleSoft, I think that was 2014. And then, one of the handouts, including kind of our total cost of PeopleSoft, at least this is what I can see in PeopleSoft, expense detail, and then from the cyber contract. Thank you. And then kind of the spending to date for modernization. So, that would encompass telestaff for public safety, Chronos, Syracuse Workforce Central for, our union population, and then Oracle for payroll processing. With PeopleSoft, if you think of finance as a house, you have payments going out, payments coming in. So payments coming in, revenue, property taxes. Finance in general is just incredibly decentralized today. We're going into different systems for everything. So PeopleSoft really was general ledger accounting, how we record things, and how are we dispersing, accounts payable. So checks going to vendors. PeopleSoft did nothing with payroll. There was no human capital management. Yes, we had access to that module. It was never built out properly. And this is very hard work. We've been doing this project for years. We're on meetings every single day. In my opinion, prior administrations, I wouldn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Like, this is a nightmare going through this project and reviewing our processes with departments, finding all the things, DPW does it this way, but Parks and Rec does it this way. How do we centralize that? So, I think we've said, finance centralization, HR centralization, AS400 payroll, police and fire on different servers. So we have zero access to police and fire's payroll information. The payroll clerks downstairs, we get the information from police. They said $2,000 in overtime, we're going to pay it. We have zero, we can't vet that number. There's zero insight into how that number is being calculated. Whereas now with Oracle payroll, we're bringing that all under one roof. So, we have access to all the police and fires. Everything will be centralized. And, with COVID and all the turnover, it really was, we had this person retire, this thing fell off, and we haven't done that for 3 years. I think with this standardizing the HR and the payroll process as, workflows, the documentation we're getting, someone leaves, well, we know we have to do step 4 because we know we have to do step 4, whereas like today, we're not doing step 4. That's kind of my spiel for PeopleSoft and this project, I guess.
To your question, I think if we continue on the path we're on, we are good by the end of this calendar year, not jeopardizing finance. On the other hand, when we launch that, if we decide to launch that as another bill and another, I'm assuming another committee meeting and another discussion, but with payroll and taking care of our people, the benefits aspect, the recruiting aspect, all of that is done before the administration change and the support for 10 months after being done. So we'd have a year under our belt before administration change.
So at that point, we're off of PeopleSoft and totally into Oracle?
For
Not
every,
yet. Not
finance
yet.
would operate in PeopleSoft and HR and payroll would operate in Oracle.
So I have a question. Finance people, HR. So would that help with the cumbersome of like certain departments, for instance, parks, I'm the chair of parks, where they have seasonal people that come back every year for the last 15 years. And every time they come back, they have to go through all this whole process again. Would this help change it so it won't be so cumbersome where, they have to do the paperwork all over again?
Yeah, so the paperwork aspect, some things need to be done annually if they're returning. And we would still put them through an orientation. Things change. If you weren't here all winter, something might have changed. We put you through another orientation. But the majority of that data will be stored, and we can activate and deactivate people rather than terming. And because right now, if we terminate
Because right now, you guys
S400,
terminate them instead
it
of.
causes an issue. So we
Right.
can deactivate for the season and then bring them back, and all of their paperwork and everything, all of their data is still there. So it helps with that absolutely, and it's less cumbersome to have them in Oracle than AS400.
And it'll
When they
be,
go into work, do they have like a timesheet still?
Right
They
now,
have to
everything's
record?
still done on paper.
So you have to do all right, so you're going back like we did 50 years ago. You have to assign, and you have to assign, approve it.
Yep, we haven't changed.
So you have, and someone has to put all that in.
Yep.
Now, are you looking maybe is using the phone where they can sign in on their phone? Do you have an app where city employees use their phone?
Yeah, so they would go to the UKG app or the website, which we're calling SWC, Syracuse Workforce Central. But they would go to that platform to input their time, request time off, any leaves or anything like that would be done through that portal.
So you would have to, when they punch in, you have to be on that site.
Yeah.
You can't do it from home,
So we're exploring the idea of using a phone. Right now, it's
Yeah.
web-based because you got to be connected to the network.
Right.
We would have to geofence everything to make sure people aren't punching in from.
Because I say that because the Syracuse Mets do that now.
Yeah.
They have a program where the whole organization, you have to be able, you can punch in if you want to.
Yep, that would
So-
absolutely be at our fingertips without extra cost. It's there. We just have to.
Okay, but are you still, is some probably still use the Chronos where you have to put in your social security number? Have you ever done that
no, so I mean, the
before?
Chronos, it would still be digital punches, but, today we're using physical punch cards. So, a supervisor's taking those punch cards at the end of the week and manually calculating the
Okay, so when
employee's
you
hours
go in
based
the
on.
department, you don't have like a Chronos, you got to punch in or out.
Yeah, they would have. There's like tablets on the wall at DPW and
Yeah,
all the.
okay.
On the
They would
first floor
use
of
that
City
to
Hall.
punch in
Right,
if they
that's
want.
what I
yeah.
dealt with, the Walgreens, okay.
Yep. And then we can explore the option to use a cell phone. Like I said, it's there. It wouldn't cost us anything extra. We just have to build it the way to make sure that it's accurate and it's working.
So Rick, from an HR standpoint, for you, payroll going first makes the most sense because all those employer records, you'll be able to turn on the HRIS module much easier. correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay.
HRIS and payroll. So HR information system and payroll are essentially the same data.
Okay.
They operate in separate ways. Obviously, one is to pay, but the HRIS stores all that data, which feeds, that is the repository for true information.
Yeah.
That feeds payroll, that feeds all of these other systems that we will turn on. But those two going first is absolutely crucial.
Do we have an idea how quickly after payroll's moved over, we could turn on the HRIS, the rest of it?
So as soon as payroll is ready to go live, they're building those simultaneously.
Okay,
So
okay.
because they're using them to feed each other data. So HRIS and payroll will go live at the same time. Then the modules after, the recruiting module, the learning management and benefits will all be in the fall. So if we go live, like we anticipate in August with payroll and HRIS, they said by October we would essentially be done with one of them, and then so benefits would probably go first because it's a matter of 2 weeks worth of work. Establish the benefits bridge, and then recruiting would be shortly thereafter. So
Richard, so going back to what I was trying to ask before, so if finance is going to be in PeopleSoft and HR in Oracle, is the ultimate goal to have everybody in the same program? Oh, thank you. Sorry. And you know, the fact that you're not communicating through, you know, you're not speaking the same language in 2 different programs. How bad is that?
correct. So ideally, finance would also be operating in Oracle. That's a different lift and a different amount of money. I think that's $3 million, a little over $3 million to get the finance aspect in Oracle as well. So right now we're just trying to get payroll is absolutely critical. It's on its last leg. AS400 is limping along, and we've separated the two to try to keep pay alive and make sure we pay our people. Finance will figure out once we get the critical piece taken care of.
So do you have a time frame of when you think you can do this? So that we're all in the same program?
Oh, for like general ledger and like capital projects, I think, you know, getting this project over the finish line first and then kind of looking at, you know, that other avenue. Because yes, a centralized system would help tremendously. I think with the payroll piece and AS400, like the healthcare workers bonus for the firefighters, like we're still dealing with that. Like that's still an issue in finance today that no one, you know, firefighters were paid, everyone's happy. We're still working on reconciling that information because of how the AS400 recorded it, how it was unposted, and then how we're, you know, doing the refund, as well as, you know, screwing up our 941, so IRS quarterly tax filings, which were screwed up because of that. So I think just all of these, like, payroll, there's a reason that companies outsource payroll. You know, Paychex, ADP, like, it can be difficult and it can be annoying, but at the same time, once the process is in place, like, it should be a push of a button. For us, it is not a push of a button. Even after this, it's probably not a push of a button. There will always be some type of manual intervention that needs to happen just because, you know, that's why there's a person behind the machine. For employee health insurance deductions, we cut ourselves a check. Every payroll cuts a check, employee health insurance deductions, that we bring over to CPC and deposit in one of our bank accounts because AS400 doesn't have the capabilities of how to record this deduction properly. So that's something we're doing every week. We go from payroll with a check that we're depositing into the city's accounts, that then we have to do, you know, a manual reconciliation of insurance expense at the end of the month that, you know, I've been here 4 years now and okay, this is what we have to do. But like, when I step back, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, no other organization in the world has to do a monthly insurance reconciliation because their payroll system doesn't know how to record employee insurance deductions properly.
But is that because of the, I know before there was some mention of some certain modules that were never utilized? And is that something that could have been an issue, that those modules were never open? So
Like the
those
human
systems
capital
weren't talking
management
to each
and
other?
PeopleSoft, yeah, if that was built out properly 10 years ago, yes, that issue probably would have gone away. But, you know, Rick and I both come from the private sector, and I think, you know, this change and just seeing how other organizations can operate, you know, that's something we want. I think when PeopleSoft was being implemented, the leadership at the time was just very resistant to any change. And I think that was part of the reason, you know, we're dealing with PeopleSoft 10 years later. There was not, let's adopt this new technology. Let's make sure we're changing our processes. I mean, we're going through things today that I'm like, why do we record it this way? And you know, I've talked to the auditors, like, well, that's how they used to do it in the old ACS. And I'm like, so we've just continued doing that for 10 years because we did it in the old system. Even though the new system has a different, you know, budget module that would have tracked this properly, we kept on doing these extra journal entries because we didn't know this isn't how you record grants. So I think, with EY, people, process, technology, we've centralized HR, we've centralized finance, centralized payroll. We're improving our processes, evaluating those. I think for the last 2.5 years, seeing, this is how, time and attendance is kept in the departments, mapping it, figuring out what does Parks do differently than DPW, how do we get these, making sure we're following the union contracts. Because with our current process, not only is it prone to error, but it's very prone for fraud, which I think with all of everything being digital, our paper-based processes can be manipulated, and with the digital audit trail, we are really eliminating that fraud risk, specifically on overtime.
So how will the day-to-day operations of your staff be different? And then how will the day-to-day change for, all city employees?
Tremendously. Right now, you have a departmental designee. Typically, that's a secretary or an admin assistant that is, going into the time and attendance module in AS400 on a weekly or biweekly basis, entering, hundreds of employees' times on a calendar, going into each day. Yep, 7.25 worked, 7.25 worked, 7.25 vacation. That's how we track accruals. Really hundreds of employee hours go into getting payroll out every week. That step with a fully, implemented Syracuse Workforce Central and TeleStaff, that's automated. We are digitally tracking time and attendance, accruals. You're requesting vacation in the system that will, auto-populate. Yep, you're taking vacation the Friday before Memorial Day. And, we've done some parallel testing, and we had, this 8 hours. This guy got paid an extra 8 hours. Well, his timesheet didn't match this, and, Kronos didn't match this. So how did that 8 hours get on how did he get paid for that? Oh, well, he went over to the payroll clerk and told her, I worked that day. That doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. So I think, the departmental delegate, they're out of it pretty quickly once Kronos and TeleStaff. TeleStaff and Kronos, those are the hours. Those will feed to Oracle for the payroll processing. Assuming those integrations are built out correctly, we're talking 3 layers of data entry. That really goes away, and I think we're actually reviewing the payroll before it goes out. Now it's we're getting it out by the skin of our teeth. We don't have time to review. Does this make sense? Does an employee getting paid 440 hours in a 1-week period, does that make sense when there's 168 hours in a week? No. Did that happen? Yes. In the future state, would we be able to catch that because we actually can be proactive? We can actually review the information before it's being processed. That's the goal of the future state, whereas right now we're just so reactive to try to get payroll out, we can't see, do these numbers make sense?
So to your skin of our teeth comment, are we staffed adequately to do this kind of conversion right now? Putting on them, keeping payroll going out the door to the current employees and also converting to a new system at the same time?
Payroll testing is going to be a nightmare, yeah, because you're doing payroll twice. But
Right.
That's why we have EY here. They're going to be guiding us through that process and leveraging resources, just making sure that we're still getting payroll out while we're doing this parallel testing in the new system. And I think I've made the comment before. When they do road reconstruction, there's a reason they close down this the road. You can't have cars going through the intersection as they're trying to pave that. We can't stop payroll. You have to make sure people are. We can't just say, okay, everyone, you're not going to get paid for the next 3 months. That's not an option for us. That's not a luxury we have. So parallel testing is going to be a difficult period, but it's something that needs to get done.
And when you say if it's built out correctly, or assuming it's built out correctly, what does that look like? Is that financial? Like if financially something isn't supported, then say you got 3 items and 2 of them are supported. I don't know what that comment means.
That comment honestly comes from just me thinking of how police overtime is paid today. And right now, this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but however it comes over from telestaff, we're going to have to look at approval dates because police overtime right now doesn't necessarily, it gets worked in that 2-week period. It doesn't necessarily get approved in that same payroll period. So if a lieutenant doesn't look at telestaff and they wait a month and then they approve their overtime, well, if the integration is just looking at the last 2 weeks, it's not going to pull in that overtime from a month ago. But if you're looking at approval dates, okay, Lieutenant whoever just approved that overtime on May 21st, it will know to pull in that overtime. So that's kind of that specific.
So they need to submit their overtime in the same pay period, even though it may not be approved.
Yeah, so tell us staff, because, you know, for police overtime, your direct supervisor, you might not be working that overtime for your direct supervisor. You report to Lieutenant A, Lieutenant B is offering this overtime shift. You know, police officer C works overtime for Lieutenant B. I'm already confusing my letters here. But Lieutenant B should be approving that overtime because Lieutenant A doesn't know if he worked that overtime or not. So really, the actual supervisor of that shift would be approving that employee's overtime. So that's,
So with this system, then that'll be a little better?
that's happening in telestaff today.
So, a couple different questions. One, we're talking about going live in August. What do we need to do in terms of training and capacity building between now and August?
So that's where I was heading with. So we've got to test the system. That happens first. So that is starting soon. We're finishing up documentation and the data conversion. Then we test to make sure Tracy and his team break the system or try to break the system. And we do everything in our power to come up with every caveat you could ever imagine. What if somebody does X, Y, and Z, but not A? What happens? And we go through that process to make sure we can't break the system. From there, we begin training. That training is conducted. EY is doing essentially train the trainer. So EY is pulling me and my team, Mike and his team in, training us. And the initial training will be them training us. Then it's a group effort of us and EY training managers. And then the third iteration is us training with EY, essentially mentoring and making sure that we're doing what we need to. And at that point, after 3 iterations of training, the hope is that we are trained well enough to be trainers and conduct training internally. And that team consists of HR leadership, finance leadership, digital services, budget. Kind of the heavy users are going to be trained first with the ability to train everybody else on the system.
I guess I'm thinking about the internal controls document that Mike provided to me. I'm not sure if other folks here got it. Nita got it. Nita read through it with me the other day. You know, they talked about one of the challenges being staffing. You already addressed, you know, one of the staffing concerns is you talk about, you know, who we have internally and who we have externally. Training is one of the pieces being addressed, and with, you know, trainer models, one of the things that I'm concerned about is that when you take a small group and make it bigger, make it bigger, make it bigger, you know, the messaging becomes more diffuse, and, you know, unless we're monitoring and watching the, you know, the quality and content of the training as it goes from 1 to 4 to 16 grows exponentially, you know, that quality, regardless of, you know, who's delivering, starts to break down as we spread out more.
Absolutely.
You know, that's one example, but thinking about those internal controls, you know, essentially what they're talking about is making sure that we have the systems in place organizationally to make sure that it succeeds. What are some of those controls that you're thinking about, you know, from an oversight, from a management perspective, and what's the plan to roll them out?
Yeah, no, I can touch upon that. I mean, really, you know, pre-COVID, everything paper-based. You know, we use DocuSign in some sense today for, you know, personnel changes, but really the personnel function takes place through email. And we get hundreds of emails every day, and if you missed an email, okay, now this new person's not getting hired. Whereas I think, you know, some of the information technology, general controls that are present in Oracle payroll is, you know, you're standardizing this process. You can only hire a person one way now. And I think with the training, building out kind of the benefits in recruiting, there'll be a learning module as well. So I mean, as far as being able to hold our people accountable, like we'll be able to track that, you need to complete these trainings by this date. Maybe we have some published videos. We'll have, I think, PDFs, other guides. Does that address your question at all?
Let's say we roll it out, everything goes well, we get everyone trained. What are, I guess, kind of, how will your role as department heads shift as we, supervise and watch the process playing out and making sure that it isn't truly occurring as we believe it should be?
I think we actually have the tools to review that now. I mean, so right now, if I want to see who's missing timesheets, I need to request one of our IT programmers to run a missing timesheet report that has hundreds of people missing timesheets. Having everything in one system now, just the reporting capabilities, okay, these are the 5 people that didn't submit their time for last week. We have to go after them. And I mean, as far as the sticks and carrots, start issuing, holding them accountable, being able to issue disciplinary letters. If you're not, if we're saying the new process is you submit your timesheet at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, holding people accountable to that. Not to say we're not going to pay someone if they don't issue their timesheet, but we don't have the tools to hold people accountable today as far as making sure every department's got their timesheet entered. Whereas now I think just with all the reporting capabilities, we'll be able to track that better. Better visibility in employees' overtime. I guess, do you have anything?
No, I mean, that pretty much hits it. I was going to comment on something before that, the training piece. I think the documentation that we're going through now, and I don't mean to backtrack, but the documentation piece that we're going through now, those hundreds of pages of documents, one important piece for REA and myself is to go through and sanitize those and take my information as a super user that will outlive the HR department, take that information, sanitize it for management, and roll out trainings and have continual trainings and have a reference point that managers have a much easier access than we do as super users. But taking that, creating a document that people can reference and utilize as on a daily basis, that is your new Bible per se for all of the actions that you would take as a manager. For us, it's different. We have different access. We'll have a lot more to look at, and it's tough to sanitize that down. That's why it's 350 pages. But for a manager that is doing basic things like hiring folks, notifying anything, those are simple things that we can create PDFs, and ideally we'll have an intranet in the near future and put those on the intranet where people have access to pull that at any given time and say, okay, I'm hiring somebody I haven't in 6 months. I don't want to screw this up. Here's my reference point, and I can go through it step by step, and I know it'll be the same every single time.
And have you thought about levels of access, what people can see?
Absolutely.
Responsibilities and how that ties to union contracts and job titles?
Absolutely. So there is varying levels of access. So my team and Mike's team being super users, payroll and HR needing access to essentially all the data. We're exploring the possibility of having an outside company take a look at garnishments and handling our garnishments, our printing of W-2s, our facilitation of FMLA, all sorts of third-party things that we need done. Those we can grant specialized access to, where the folks running W-2s, all they're pulling is raw data. So they can't see emergency contacts, anything else going on in your employment history. All they see is the number that they need to put into your W-2, and everything auto-populates, and they can print it and send it. Same thing with FMLA. They would have a limited view of your start date because they need to know if you qualify for FMLA, your hours worked, and that's it. So they would have, again, a sanitized view of the system, but enough to achieve their goal that they need to, and that's it. And then there would be employee self-serve, so employees would have access to all of their stuff, manager self-serve, and those would all be restricted views.
And the assigned trainer that comes with the software, I assume?
No, we have one internally.
So is there someone from Oracle that will be
So, no, we don't have anybody with Oracle. Oracle, they train EY. So EY is, I mean, they have experts on all of the different systems. We have their Oracle experts. So they have Workday experts. They go out to the Workday projects, people that are implementing Workday. So EY we're working with their Oracle team.
What's EY?
Ernst & Young.
Oh, okay.
They're the third party helping us with implementation, the training.
We were just about to bring that up. Can you tell us a little bit about the work they're doing and where we're at with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we're kind of in that tail end of the data conversion. We're making sure that the data coming out of AS400 is correct. We found out yesterday, it was a pain point, the veteran issue we had. We found out that there is some line in AS400 that negates veteran status. So if you input data into that AS400 line, it doesn't populate a veteran status. So we created a list of veterans. Certain people with that line item weren't on the list because it negated that data for whatever reason. So we're making sure we're in the tail end of cleaning that data up to make sure that we have the correct data, and that when it transfers to the new system, that won't happen. So we're working through that. Like I said, tail end of that. Next steps, and this will be on repeat essentially for all of the different modules that we implement, but for HRIS and payroll, finishing up that along with the documentation piece. Next we move into testing, so making sure that we can't break the system, or hopefully we do, so we find the flaws. Then we begin training, then we officially go live with the product. And then then we move into support. EY will help us for 10 months after that. Then we do that same thing for benefits, recruiting, learning management. We go through that same exact process where we will build, document, test, train, deploy, and then they'll help us with
So
support.
they're basically structuring all of this initiative.
Yes, absolutely.
What are we doing? Forget the numbers for a second. Let's talk about the actual people. What are we doing to prepare for the cultural shift that happens when you do something like this? Especially when it comes to, first of all, things are going to change for people that have gotten away with some of the bad habits, right? So, but I also worry about the employees that during a conversion away from an antiquated software, there's a tendency to treat them like they're stupid sometimes. And in fact, they're not stupid. They've been doing something very well in an old system, and now you have to teach them, an old dog, new tricks. If you give me a knee replacement tomorrow, I'm still not going to run a marathon. Right. Maybe, we'll see. But I always worry about the people that get kind of lost in the shuffle of that change, saying the AS400 is old and it's garbage and blah, 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 blah. But what are we doing to prepare them?
So I think for the employees, from their perspective,
And I hope you're not guessing at their perspective. Is someone asking them if they're prepared for something like this? Because I don't want to assume they are just from guessing.
And I think it's involving, people at the bottom in the entire process. I mean, they're in all these meetings with EY. All the payroll clerks are in the meetings. I know most of Rick's staff is in the HR meetings. I think with prior IT projects, it's just kind of like, okay, here's this new thing, use it. Whereas it's really getting their feedback and like, hey, this is this annoying thing that happens every couple of weeks. How do we treat this in the new system? So I know from payroll, that's kind of what we're working through right now. I know as far as the communication plan, we've kind of been in a holding pattern to wait for this committee meeting. Hopefully we can finish the project. But we have this whole communications plan as far as department heads and then getting it out to the rest of the workforce. But I think specifically for the HR and payroll people, it's making sure we're getting their buy-in. As opposed to just, here's this shiny new thing, learn how to use it.
So if someone's paycheck is wrong now, and are they calling a payroll clerk directly? Is that their first line?
Yes, and I think to kind of go back to your question, how to make sure, we process payroll about 98 to 99% accurately, every week, which isn't bad. But, we're issuing probably 10 to 15 manual checks every week. Missed overtime, something was fat-fingered, these hours were missed, a supervisor forgot to include these hours. So I think it's those pay discrepancies, hopefully go to zero. Because if you're approving your Kronos time card and it's, 40 hours worked, 10 hours of overtime, that's what you're getting paid. It's not someone's mistyping this number into the system. It's integrated. This is what's getting paid. So I think employees will be more confident that their pay is accurate, reducing the manual checks. And then their accrual balances too. I mean, we're constantly behind on, our accrual balances. So an employee might think, oh, I have 3 vacation days, great. Well, you actually took one 2 weeks ago that hasn't been inputted yet, so you actually only have 2. So that, long weekend you wanted to take, you can't do. So I think just from employees being disgruntled, I think avoiding some of that as well. This is truly your time. It's real-time accrual information, whereas right now the accruals are never correct. And then trying to produce an accrual report as well out of AS 400. That's an audit request. We request it every single year in August. We typically get it in November or December of every year, which is not that that's the only thing holding up the audit, but that in the past has been one of the bigger items, which now it's push of a button. What are the accruals as of today?
And I was just going to add, I think employee perspective is twofold. We have the employees that are going to be heavy users, then the everyday employee that is not going to be accessing this system on a regular basis. For those that are going to be accessing this system to do their work, the majority of it is as easy as logging into Facebook. Obviously, we need to train. It's new, it's different. But I think we can confidently say that my team is not here to say, do it this way, never again. We need to hold their hand and walk them through till they get comfortable processing their work through a new system. It won't be difficult, and I can confidently say that it'll be easy transition for everybody. All the stuff you were doing on paper, you're just clicking buttons now. It's the same process. Well, it's not the same process, but similar process, easier interface. For the folks that are using it on a day-to-day basis, again, I don't think we're going to say, if somebody comes in to process an address change, we're not going to say, no, go do it on the system. We'll educate them in the moment and say, you can do this on the system should you choose. We're not going to start rejecting people because you don't want to use Oracle or you haven't logged in yet, so you don't understand it. We walk them through that process, educate them. If they still choose not to, we'll handle the request, but it'll greatly reduce the number of transactions that we're doing and allow, I think the majority of the workforce is ready for the ability. You shouldn't have to go to HR to say, hey, I moved from apartment A to apartment B, or I finally bought a house, or, I have a child now and I need to change my deductions. It shouldn't be hours of paperwork and sitting with us and making sure it gets to the right person. You can just log in with the email and say, yep, this is the updated and it's approved. It goes through instantly. So I think people are ready for it. And anybody that's coming to us recently, any other company, that's what they're used to. Mm-hmm. Anybody coming to us in the future, that's what they're used to. And we are one of the few that are doing this the way we're doing it. So I think it's important to know that we wouldn't shut people down and say, well, too bad you can't have your taxes adjusted because you don't want to log into the system. We'll still handle it, but educating them as we go is going to be huge.
Will they have an option so they want to use a personal day off? They can put them, but under notifying your supervisor, sick time, funeral time, so they can. Do they also have an option where they could actually look at the time card sheets at the end of the week and just verify it? Yeah, this is correct before it goes into payroll.
Yeah, they sign off and submit every week.
Okay, so they look at it, they verify if there's any errors, they know who to call, contact.
And you can see it on that screen. So like if we go to mobile, you'd be able to see it on your phone. It'll give you each day the time worked, the overtime. If you had any out of title pay, if you had all of that will display. You verify it's correct and hit submit.
Well, with sick and like a person that you need to contact your supervisor, you're just not going to put it in yourself.
Yeah, you would
out of courtesy.
Usually, like with a sick day, you would call in sick. Your supervisor would know next day when you come in, or whenever you come in next, you would put that in your timesheet as a sick day.
That. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
One last question about Ernest Young. So, just a couple weeks ago, it was time sensitive payments out to them or not. There was some confusion around what was time sensitive or not. Can you update us with that?
It is still kind of time sensitive. They've gone above and beyond to make sure that we don't drop this project. So they know the importance of the project as much as we do. We are currently not paying them. This is what we're here to discuss, is making sure we have funding to pay them. But they have not dropped a single call. They haven't dropped a single meeting. There's going on as business as usual. So
as you shared in the last board meeting, you said that they were okay as long as we were in the process of getting there.
Correct, yep.
So are we still okay?
We're
imagine
still
they're probably
okay. They're
watching
waiting
this.
on the vote, but we're okay right now. So,
If I may, Counselor, Frank Leva, the city's chief administrative officer. Okay is a relative term. So as I mentioned to Counselor Williams, we have been taken onto the risk list at EY. EY is a huge international auditing and consulting firm, and they meet, and so their team that covers New York State municipalities have agreed to continue working with us. We are 3 weeks.
So Frank,
past due.
how did we get to this position with them?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. We started making this request in February, and it was right as we were entering budget season, and we probably could have pushed a little bit harder, and
We haven't paid them in a long time?
we paid them through April.
Through April?
Yep.
Of last year?
April 30th of this year was
this
when the funding that the council had approved ran out. So they have continued, as Rick said, they have continued to work.
So then
We
it
met with
became,
their- I'm sorry.
then it became time sensitive, but then at the board meeting, you said it wasn't.
Never said it wasn't.
Well,
It is absolutely time sensitive, without question.
so it was related to, at that moment, I mean, you were the one in the microphone, you said that as long as we were in this process, they would hold on to.
We were hoping to, they had said, they had agreed to go through last vote cycle. There was a need for a committee meeting. We met with their senior team, the mayor met with their senior team Tuesday, I don't know, to reassure them and hear their concerns. But, do they want to see this project through? Absolutely.
Oh, so
Are
do
they-
we, I'm sure.
Yeah. Are they concerned about getting paid? Sure they are. But I think we all agree that we are where we are, and they are, I am sure, watching right now. Their business development folks know how to tune in. So they're, gauging the tenor of this conversation and putting that into their risk model. But, they've been tremendous partners.
It's good to know. Thank you.
Frank, you figured out the bond process for this item?
For the majority of it. The piece of it, and Mike, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, the piece that we can't bond for is the post-implementation hypercare. So one of the things that Rick mentioned that I don't think we explored is that part of this is EY will stick around after this implementation for about 10 months and provide hypercare, make sure that the development work that we did sticks, that the training sticks, that folks are getting it, and that it's all working. That, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that we cannot, the hypercare we can't bond for, everything else we can.
Yeah, GASB guidance is pretty clear as far as intangibles, which, software is an intangible. That line in the sand of like your go live date. So if, let's say July 1st, we know it's not July 1st, but, July 1st hits, we process a payroll, you got paid with, the payroll is processed through Oracle. Everything after that, not capitalizable. You cannot bond for those expenses. So any type of support or, hypercare, as EY calls it, will need to come out of operating dollars. It cannot be capital dollars.
You've talked about communication plan, you've talked about changing the culture, you've talked about a scope and sequence that we're nearing the end of. What are your concerns? What worries you about the project?
honestly, this.
Yeah.
Ensuring that everybody understands the importance of it is the culture change, I would argue, is the scariest part, in the sense that I think we all need to understand how important this project is.
And I think it's putting payroll in front of supervisors and managers a little bit more. Like, we are explicitly telling you, you have to go into the system and approve this. And, I'll sign off on those 3 weeks from now because that's what I always do. Like, not acceptable anymore. Like, Tuesday at 3 p.m., you will have payroll work to do for an hour or whatever, the date is, whatever our deadline is. With what our process and our tools all today, we can't hold people accountable. Everyone knows, like, get your timesheets to payroll by noon on Tuesday. If you don't, you're still getting paid. So I think
related to that, you say not acceptable anymore. what is the mechanism by which it becomes not acceptable?
I think, disciplinary letters from personnel, I think we have the data to actually prove, okay, you did not go in and sign this timesheet, what's stopping someone saying, yeah, dated these all April 30th, I signed these off, you just didn't get them, they were in inter-office mail. Well, we're not using inter-office mail anymore, everything's digital. So I think everyone will have access, everyone's looking at the same screen. This gives us the tools to hold people accountable. But as far as those sticks, I think we're still
I think
figuring
that's
those out.
where my concerns lies, that we can all identify the fact that that's not acceptable, but unless we do something to make it not acceptable, the practice continues and, these efforts go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with the unions obviously are a little bit different, but I mean, with, management, you get $100 deducted from your pay. And I mean, I'm just spitballing right now, but I mean, I think coming up with what some of those, disciplinary actions are, we're still trying to figure that out.
I think pay deductions is going to be.
Okay.
And just to reiterate that, the testing that's been done, so we've got one department there where we've done the parallel testing, we've done 4 cycles of parallel testing. Were there problems with the system? Sure there were. And iteratively, we had to go back and re-implement some of the rules. But the primary problem was exactly as you described. It's management, it's compliance, let's call it that. But to Mike's point, to Rick's point, we now have the tools to see directly through. It can't be, oh, I forgot, but you're going to process my timesheet, or here's a timesheet with 20 red marks on it, and please make sure there's an audit trail completely. What it was supposed to be, what the changes were, who made the changes, when they made the changes, why they made the changes, and if they didn't make the changes don't go through. So you're absolutely, it's change management. I've done a ton of these. It all comes down to, it's not the technology, it's the change management, it's the compliance. And honestly, if EY has any value, if it took away everything else, it's their ability to help us think through that change management and that compliance. That's tremendously where the value that they've provided is.
Just to touch upon compliance one more time. New York State Retirement, they are moving to, I forget what they're calling it, but like the gold reporting. We're currently on the legacy reporting. They imposed a deadline at the end of last calendar year that you need to move to the gold reporting. AS400 cannot support what this gold reporting is. So now Mayor Fabian uploads files to New York State Retirement every month. That's now integrated, and the new software will support that gold reporting. So that's an issue that we can't address without a new technology. Additionally, New York State requires an attestation. So really, it's a signature on a timesheet. We're not in compliance with that. We're not. Police officers, firefighters don't see their timesheets, don't know if they were preparing timesheets. So this is, something we are non-compliant with, which, we are programming, we will be compliant for in the future.
Is there resistance among the staff not to do this? I mean, everybody wants this, right?
It's change. So, I think, just as humans, you're resistant to change, but I think everyone acknowledges, AS400 is not the long-term solution. And I think just for the rest of finance, this is really setting the stage to, I do think we will eventually try to reintroduce, the other software pieces. We pay $120 million a year to employees through a 40-year-old system. And just as far as some of the grant and capital project tracking, to be where I would like to be as far as some of that automation, we can't do that with AS400, and this is really the first step of moving in that direction.
If there was a complete build out of systems through each department, making the work somewhat lighter, does that equate to a decrease in staff?
No.
I think, so right now, payroll, like the finance secretary works on payroll 1 day a week. So it's not a full-time job for her, but like those hours, yeah, she now has time to do other tasks that are not, data input for payroll.
But that's not her job per se. She
No.
just does it as a fill-in.
Yep.
Will at some point these programs show where there are going to be the vacancies or where there are the vacancies? As we don't know right now if they exist.
Absolutely. So in the data conversion in the planning and requirements phase, we determined that we are moving to a position management style rather than a person management style in the system. So what that'll do is, it'll create org charts that we can look at and we can utilize in real time, but it'll show those same org charts with vacancies. So right now, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot I had a position, I should add it to. Now it'll show under Commissioner DPW, it'll have all of the deputy commissioners, those that aren't filled, and the ones that are filled, and then that'll happen throughout the whole organization. So we'll have a total, and then we'll be able to run a vacancy report and say, okay, I want to see all vacancies across the city. Where do they lie? You can see who it reports to. When the last time it was filled, well, we won't have that data right away because they're vacant going in, but as they become vacant in the future, we'll be able to say the last incumbent was X and it was 3 years ago. Why haven't we filled that vacancy? And we've been planning with our team that is an important factor. Everywhere else I've ever been, vacancies shouldn't exist for, I mean, when I worked for the state of Maryland, you had 9 weeks. And if you're not filling it in 9 weeks, you clearly don't need the position. That was a little rough. We don't want to be that rough, but you know, if you're not filling a vacancy within a time frame, do you need that vacancy? And so actively managing department heads and our cohort and saying, hey, you need to fill these vacancies. I see it's been vacant for 3 weeks. What are you doing? Where's the paperwork? Get it, or, you know what I mean? Start the process in the system so we can fill these vacancies because they're going, in my opinion, they should probably go away if you're not going to fill them. So being able to actively manage those vacancies will be very much a part of the system. Absolutely.
So in 6 months, you know, I'm not necessarily looking for an ROI, like here's the dollar to dollar match, but you know, what will you be able to report back to us on in terms of what has
Progress.
changed, what progress has been made, what we have or haven't done?
In the sense of the project or data?
Both.
Both. So data, I mean, the system is being uploaded with data from 2024 and 2023. So we'll be able to report on that data right away. Anything historic, we'll still have to reference AS400. But going forward, we'll be able to run reports on any of that data and provide whatever data you want. So I know we've been talking about EEO data. We will be able to pull that in a matter of seconds rather than having 3 different people in IT pull data from 3 different systems to match them up, clean it up. We'd be able to run that stuff. We'd be able to run the vacancy reports, all of these reports that council and previous council members as well have been asking for, we would be able to pull in a matter of moments. So that data would be clean, easily accessible. As far as the project itself, I would argue that HR and payroll is done and we're in hypercare in 6 months. So we would be able to report back saying we either are at the tail end of finishing up some details or we are completely done. And now we're at the point of EY is here, to Frank's point, to make sure that things going forward are smooth, the trainings are done, people understand how to use it. We're looking at, so like trades is coming up for negotiation. So we'd be looking at implementing all of the trades changes in their contract into the new system. We'd be at that phase rather than building a system.
So instead of 10 months build out, you looking at, well, process learning, I guess, you're looking at possibly 6 months, then you move on to the next phase.
Well, so yeah, so build out is projected to wrap up at the end of December, then 10 months of hypercare after that. So that's making sure, that's EY sticking around to make sure we're using it right. And any questions we can call them. We have a dedicated team to answer our calls with whatever we're going through.
Oh, but I thought you were saying that you felt like 6 months of hypercare would be more, I don't know, maybe you didn't say that.
6 months for build out. So like,
okay.
yeah, 6 months for build out and then
6
10
months
months
in
of
December,
hypercare
okay.
is what the anticipated plan is.
Are you anticipating that because that's the length of this administration?
It falls just shy of the end of the
I would
administration.
think maybe overshooting it by a few months into the next administration might be beneficial.
We can do that, absolutely.
I mean, we certainly don't want them pulling up shop a month before Frank leaves. Assuming you leave, Frank.
Yeah, we can absolutely extend,
Sorry. You know what I meant, though. I just used you as an example.
or we could split the hypercare. I mean, we have flexibility with the hypercare. We could say we're taking 5 months up front and then add administration change. We want 5 more months. So you have 2 months going in, a month of change, and then 2 months after the change, or 5 months after the change. They would be flexible with us to spend that how we need to. But yeah, 6 months to implement. Like I said, so we're almost at the finish line for payroll and HR. August, that'll be done if we have the funding to do so. And then benefits is an easy 2-week project, or I don't want to speak for EY. I would imagine a 2-week project. And then recruiting is going to be a little bit of a heavier lift. That'll take us a month or two to wrap up. And then that is, LMS is right thereafter, and that's a short lift too.
If I can add one more thing, Counselor, to your question. One of the things we'll be able to do in 6 months is because we have a new help desk system, and this system will be used by end users to ticket if they have concerns or problems, something isn't working. We'll be able to report back to you what's in those tickets, what kinds of things have occurred, what themes there have been, and how those have been resolved. So we'll be able to show you both problems and solutions.
Yeah, for me, it's getting rid of green bar paper, because that's what AS400 prints on. It's tough for me to be like, this is what you're getting. I mean, Sura, the way we process Sura today, like tens of hours of work becomes minutes, just because it's being processed in a system that's actually recording things properly. I mean, you'll have better visibility, and over time we'll be able to see like, okay, let's look at sick time and how sick time's being worked at a department, and this one department's incurring more sick time than another. Do we have an issue with that department, or, what have you? So, I mean, I think it's just giving managers tools that we don't even know exist today. Yeah, I mean, payroll's still going to get out the door. I think it's reducing manual checks, but for me, the Sura win and just making sure, payroll doesn't take as much time today as it does. It takes less time in the future. It's just like the healthcare workers bonus again. Like, this is a one-time special payment that we're still dealing with.
President Parati can speak to the pain of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally flipping through green bar paper to see, is the New York State tax deduction zero? Yep, it's zero. It's difficult that we're still living in that world.
Are there any more questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
This is
you.
great
Appreciate
for
the opportunity.
clarifying all of this. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Frank. Frank, you leaving?
Thank you, Richard. This was great. Thank you.
If anything comes up, let me know. Shoot me a text.
Absolutely. We were just a little worried because there was such confusion.
Just send it to me, I'll have Tina voucher, and I can sign it. I'll go sign the shot. Because he could be, he found him in the kitchen. He went out to walk the dog, came home, and he was dead on the floor. Yeah, and that's, yes, but I've never seen it that, like, God, I'd be sad too, but he was sick for a long time, he had kidney failure. Still, you find somebody dead. Although, if you found Jackie tonight, you wouldn't be happy. She's, you know what, whatever. All the energy she spends on being nasty. I haven't answered her a single time in months. I'm here. I don't think she does.
What do you, oh, yeah.
She can call anybody she wants. And as soon as she says city auditor, you want there, that's another, we'll be here for a while.
But that could be another meeting, maybe.
You want to voice it? Because again, if they read off that, or is anybody else? It's not. the system wants to handle it, like, we're ready and able to do it. When you put it in the system, like, wait a minute, I gotta run a regular security, we have a bookkeeper, and we miss a line, and say out from reading. Usually 2 weeks late, because then the next week it's doing the same, right by. Katie, the system keeps handling that. So they were here to kind of speak to that. This thing can process whereas he has 400 like I said. Healthcare worker bonuses got to go out, the system's like, no, payroll goes out. Like, no, both, and both. No, payroll goes out. And you've got to decommission everything and say, okay, this is a new payroll system we got to run. So you basically trick the system into thinking it's running on a payroll. But it's this ancillary bonus payment you can't get out. So it's just.
So maybe they want a chance to talk about it, and ask them if they want to.
That's the system we need. They don't do it.
And we want to be able to support both, to my point with, that's what we're building now, so like our management folks that are salaried exempt, they get a salary regardless. If they work 6 hours that day, they shouldn't be.